Okay, good afternoon. Today I'm going to show you how to put up a Wild Country Trisar 2 tent. The first thing to do is obviously to remove the tent from the bag and unroll it. And you'll notice that we've got four parts to the tent. We've got the poles in this bag here, we have the pegs in this separate bag, we have this part, which is trying to blow away, which is the fly sheet, and then we have this part down here, which is the inner tent. Now, the part we have to put up first with this type of tent is the inner tent. And while we're doing that, we don't want anything to blow away, so we're going to put the fly sheet and the bag somewhere safe and weight it down with some other items, perhaps a rucksack if you have one available. So here's the inner tent. Which you need to open up. You can see that there's this section here with the mesh, which is the door and the front of the tent, and this section here, which is just plain white, which is the back of the tent. And the first thing you have to do is to orientate the tent, which means turning it round the right way. The way to do this is to have the back of the tent facing into the wind. So currently today the wind is blowing from the west, which is quite normal in the UK. So I'm going to pivot the tent round so that the back of the tent is facing into the wind. You don't notice so much on a day like today, but when it's blowing a gale, this makes a big difference to how successful your camping is going to be. The next thing to do is to take a couple of pegs and peg down the back of the tent. This will stop it from blowing away while you're inserting the poles. Use your foot to press in the tent peg. It's useful to wear some stout shoes or boots while you're doing this, and I'll just repeat that process and point out something very important. These holes here are not for the tent pegs. This loop at the end is where the peg goes. So the peg goes through the loop and into the ground at 45 degrees to give it a really firm anchorage. And the same with the other loop. Pulling the back of the tent out straight. This eyelet's been damaged. Probably by somebody trying to peg it out. There. Once the back of the tent is pegged out, that's not going to blow away, and you can start to put the poles up and insert them into the sleeves on the tent. There are 3 poles with this tent. 2 main ones which form a cross shape over the middle of the tent, and in this case they're coloured blue. That's them. And then there's a 3rd pole which is a black one, which we insert later at the front of the tent. I'll put it in my bag somewhere safe so it doesn't blow away. The poles can be assembled by shaking them, and they're all shock corded together and they just snap into place. Be careful what you're doing if there's other people round about. You don't want to poke anybody in the eye with your pole. Be particularly aware of what's going on behind you. The pole's sticking out in that direction. once they're snapped up, the two main blue poles are inserted through these sleeves. And you'll see that as the pole slides in. You may need to shake the tent a little to get it through. If you've got an assistant, they can help you, but they mustn't pull. You can only push these poles or they come undone. And then repeat the process on the other side. Once it's gone through the end, you can go to that part of the tent and insert the pole into the little brass eyelet at the end. And then, once it's in the eyelets, you can begin to assemble the tent. Again, if you've got someone to help you, it's useful to have them support the middle of the tent while you do this. And in a high wind, it's quite important to have an assistant. And the pole goes into the eyelet at the base of the tent. And there you have the beginnings of the tent. This tent will stand up with virtually no pegs because it's a geodesic dome tent, which is a very stable shape. And now we can assemble and insert the porch pole, which goes through this final sleeve at the front of the tent. This one's a little more difficult because it's a curved pole, so it may need a bit of coaxing. On this tent, it's helpfully colour coded, so the big blue poles go through the sleeves which have got the blue markings on them, and this one, which is a black pole, goes through the sleeve which has the black edging on it. Making sure, of course, you put them in the correct eyelets. The black ones, not the blue ones. Lovely. So the main structure of the tent is now intact, and we can secure it to the ground with a couple more pegs. At this stage we have these bags, and it's very easy to lose these on a windy day, so put the pole bag inside the tent bag, shake out your pegs onto the ground and the dirt from the last camping expedition. Put the peg bag in a tent bag, open the inner tent and store all of these inside, where you'll be able to find them later when you need them. Then you take your fly sheet. The front has got this black porch and a little window, so that goes to the front. The back simply has this little black hooded section. Find the apex, which is the top of the tent, and that needs to go where the poles cross over in the middle of the tent. You can feel for the crossing of the poles, and that's where these seams go on the fly sheet. Now go to the edge of the tent and take the part of the fly sheet with the blue eyelets on, line it up with the blue pole and the other blue eyelet, and simply click that into place like that, and then repeat that on all four corners of the tent. So there are 6 attachment points for the fly sheet to the frame. They're colour coded, so it's black to black down here. And it is a bit of a fiddle because it's under tension, but there it goes. And blue to blue down at the front. You may have to remove your peg while you attach it. Peg it back down. Once you have these pegs in and the frame in place, you only have to pull the front of the tent out and peg these 2 crucial attachments here, and most of the tent is structurally sound. 45 degrees again with the pegs. And to get into the tent, always unzip from the bottom like this. Never from the top. So that when you open the door, you can get inside easily without tripping over anything. If you do the zip the other way, you'll end up tripping over the fly sheet and damaging it. Whenever you're not using the tent, always keep the door shut so that you don't get insects, animals straying into the tent, or things that are in the tent blowing out and being caught by the wind. Or if you go away for a few minutes and it starts to rain, the wind could easily change direction, the rain could end up inside your tent, soaking everything that's in there. All that remains to be done now is to peg out the rest of the tent, peg out the guy lines. These are adjustable. You get hold of the little plastic adjuster and slide it like that, and it moves freely, and when you move it so that it's horizontal, it locks in position. So you peg them out at an angle to the tent like that. Okay, so the last peg's in place for this guy line here into the ground, and then you tighten the guy by sliding the plastic toggle up towards the tent whilst pulling this strand down over like that. Now on a windy day or a wet day, and sometimes during the night, these can slacken off and you may have to come out around the tent if it's flapping and tighten your guy lines like that. Looking at the tent as a whole now, when it's put up, all of the guy lines are in place, all of the pegging points are attached to the ground, and you can see that the fly sheet, the outer part of the tent, is lovely and tight. If it rains, the rain's just going to bounce off that and it's going to keep you nice and dry inside the tent. The last point to consider when you're dismantling the tent, the first peg is quite difficult. You may have to use your finger to get the first peg out, but then you can use that as a tool to hook under the other pegs and pull them out like that. With the guy lines, when you're putting them away, you should move the toggle to the middle, which is where it is there, fold it in half, and then put a very simple knot like this into the string to keep it safely stowed while you pack the tent. And then when you come to unpack it, all you have to do is get hold of the toggle, get hold of the knot and gently pull, and it comes undone, ready to peg down again. That's it. Thank you for listening.